Why are Nigerian politicians so arrogant and detached from reality?
Chairperson, thank you.
I stand before you proudly.
Why do they take pleasure in gaslighting the general public? Is it because the Nigerian people have failed to ask for accountability from their leaders?
Who are even the greatest beneficiaries? It's two people now. I just told you that we have record to show that most of the contracts in NDDC are given out to members of National Assembly.
There's an unprecedented level of hardship in Nigeria as we speak. People are unable to afford food. The cost of transportation has gone through the roof. Yet elected officials continue to mortgage Nigeria's natural resources as they use the borrowed funds to give themselves lavish lifestyles. But then we ask, how is it that there are enough funds to buy luxury vehicles for lawmakers, build a mansion for the vice president, and buy a presidential jet, even when the economy is struggling? But when it comes to raising the minimum wage for workers, the government has no money. Could it be that the government is lying to you and pushing you around to see if you will react? Let's talk about the deep-rooted corruption in Nigeria. Then you will understand exactly why they don't want you to demand for answers.
I said this government is dominated by khaki strokers and kleptocrats. Yeah.
In 2023, Nigerians used 721 billion naira, that is over $1.2 billion, to bribe public officials. This was according to a report published by the National Bureau of Statistics. The report also noted that 46% of public officials under government employment offered one form of bribe or the other. Some did this to get jobs and facilitate their recruitment into government agencies. But hang on. Here comes the shocking part of this report. Nigerian judges, that is, the judges at the court, were at the top of the list of bribe recipients while the police led in bribe requests. In a 2021 report by the United States Department, the US raised concerns about how the Nigerian judiciary was constantly under pressure from the executive and legislative arms of government. We all saw what that pressure led to during the Election Petition Tribunal. But if this report is not damaging enough to our courts, listen to what the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes had to say. Quote, 20% of those who had contact with the Nigerian judiciary were confronted with a request for the payment of a bribe. That is 20%. These concerns were made even worse when a senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Okutepa, lamented how the Supreme Court was dishing out favorable judgments to politicians without regard for the laws of the land. For example, when the Supreme Court decided to affirm the candidacy of Ahmad Lawan, a former Senate president, and Godswill Akpabio, the current Senate president, as the authentic ticket holders for the National Assembly elections in their respective states of Yobe and Akwa Ibom, the Apex Court ignored the Electoral Act of 2022 completely. Senator Lawan and Akpabio were presidential aspirants in the All Progressive Congress and could not possibly be candidates for the parliamentary elections at the same time. The laws of the land as provided in the Electoral Act of 2022 forbade it. Yet, the Supreme Court in 2022 declared both men winners of the legislative primary elections of the APC. So, in a country where the courts no longer respect the Constitution, on what grounds do these courts exist? When justice becomes a commodity available to the highest bidder, what hope is there for the common man? Corruption in the judiciary is made even more alarming when you consider the lawlessness of Nigeria's law enforcement agencies. On July 16, 2024, a report surfaced online that Nigerian policemen led by the divisional police officer of Gwarimpa in Abuja, Babale Hamza Galadima, had invaded a hotel in the First Avenue area of Gwarimpa, arresting all occupants and destroying properties in the process. The incident was said to have occurred on Sunday night at about 11:30 p.m. Here is a video of the aftermath of that police operation. You have doors and room furniture destroyed. Now, this wasn't done by armed robbers, but by law enforcement officers. According to reports, the hotel guests arrested and taken to the Gwarinpa Police Division were allegedly asked to pay 500,000 naira as bail to secure their freedom. Now, in a country where law enforcement officers are a law unto themselves, what is to stop the brutality being complained about on every market day? When law enforcement officers are the ones breaking the law, why should Nigerians trust them? If, as a law-abiding citizen, you see a policeman break into your house in the dead of the night with an AK-47, what do? Are you dealing with a criminal then? Or is that still an officer of the law? Why are police officers harassing people they should be protecting? Now, the police PR will tell you that the police is your friend. But then you go out on the street and your supposed friend is trying to kill you, telling you that they will shoot you and you cannot do anything about it. The police PR will tell you that the police is trying to make the country safe for you. But then, a minor is raped in a police station? At what point do you guys get your minds blown in Nigeria? Is there anything left for us to see before we know that they're all liars and nothing has really changed since our last protest? We still have unremorseful criminals with official guns waiting for their next victims. And yes, those criminals are wearing uniforms. But if you're still not convinced of how rotten the Nigerian system is, well, let me take you on another ride. This time to the doorsteps of the corrupt civil service. In November 2021, the Independent Corrupt Practices Commission uncovered a 20 billion naira project duplication and personal budget fraud by some federal ministries, departments and agencies. This duplication and padding occurred in the implementation of the 2021 budget and involved about 257 projects. Following an investigation of the House of Representatives into job racketeering in ministries, departments and agencies of government, there was a disturbing revelation. The House of Rep investigation uncovered a high level of corruption among government officials, many of whom confessed to receiving monies from unsuspecting job seekers in exchange for jobs. In fact, in one instance, a one-time EP's desk officer at the Federal Character Commission, Mr. Haruna Kolo, who was accused of collecting monies from people to offer them jobs, confessed that he had in fact collected over 75 million naira from applicants on the instruction of the FCC chairman, Dr. Farid Adankaka, for employment. Kolo told the committee that the FCC chairman Dankaka instructed him to receive these monies in his account and pay to her in cash, which he did at several meetings at her house. Now, paying in cash was to avoid a paper trail, obviously. According to a report in 2022 by ICPC, the civil service is even more corrupt than politicians in Nigeria. In fact, corruption by politicians in office is made even easier because of the aid they receive from people in the civil service. But why is corruption prevalent in the civil service? Let me paint a picture for you here. Now, imagine you're a civil servant in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Let's say your salary is 200,000 naira per month. From that money, you will have to commute to work every day of the week. Of course, 200,000 naira every month is never going to be enough to get your accommodation in Abuja town. So, you will then have to make do with living in the outskirts such as Kuje, Lugbe, Maraba, Masaka and Suleja axis. However, while that is saving you money on rent, you will be spending more on transportation. Living in any of these locations means you will be spending about 3,000 naira on average to and from work every weekday. That amounts to 60,000 naira in a month. When you remove children's school fees, your house rent, and feeding, you see that your monthly expenses will most likely exceed your income. For this reason, civil servants look for that extra pay, and they get it by demanding a bribe to move files from one office to another. Some won't append their signatures to a document until they get a bribe for it. People encourage this by calling it appreciation. But do you know that these civil servants are the victims of a corrupt system that has refused to pay them reasonable salaries, thereby leading to the high level of corruption that has festered? Now, how do you remedy this situation? How do you make the federal government pay you salaries that can handle your needs? Especially seeing how inflation has eroded your purchasing power. I believe it is by legislation. That is where the minimum wage comes in. But who are those that make laws in Nigeria? What are they doing about the decay in the system? Well, when they are not sending themselves money to enjoy their holidays,
In order to enable all of us to enjoy our holidays, a token has been sent to our various accounts by the clerk of the National Assembly.
they are often busy singing a song of allegiance to a president they should be holding to account. And some other times, they are busy padding the budget, buying themselves expensive SUVs, and even defending that decision on national television. Going over to the executive branch, we have a presidency that is doing all it can to spend every last dime in the Nigerian treasury. So far, the President Tinubu-led administration has borrowed 20.9 trillion naira from bonds within 1 year. In December 2023, the Senate approved President Tinubu's request to borrow $7.8 billion and another 100 million euros as part of something called the 2022 to 2024 borrowing plan. Again, in April 2024, Tinubu borrowed over 3.8 trillion naira from the Central Bank of Nigeria. But while we continue to focus our attention on the figures being mentioned, we forget to ask what is being done with the funds generated from our crude oil sales. Nigerians pay value-added tax. So where is that money going? You see, there's no way democracy works without checks and balances. But in a country where the ruling party has captured the legislative branch and the judiciary, where will that check and balance come from? How can Nigerians be asked to trust a lawless law enforcement? Why are journalists being arrested for doing their job of reporting? This administration has done just 1 year in office, yet the country is already turning upside down. Inflation is at an all-time high, crime is on the rise, the streets are not safe, the roads are terrible, banditry is now a business. Yet, the political class continues to borrow and spend on things that add nothing to the quality of life of the masses.